It is time for Israel to be removed from the United Nations. What happens when a nation defies the very principles of the institution it belongs to? Israel's actions have ignited a global conversation about whether it deserves its UN membership. Could removing Israel uphold international justice, or is the global community paralyzed by political power? The UN symbolizes peace, justice, and equality. Yet, when a member repeatedly violates these principles, the global community must ask, how far can sovereignty go? Israel's violations of international law and its ongoing apartheid policies against Palestinians question the very integrity of the UN. Israel joined the UN with an implicit commitment to peace and human rights. But decades of accusations, settler expansion, occupation, and disregard for UN resolutions paint a grim picture. Oppressive policies, especially against Palestinians, have overshadowed its obligations as a UN member. Countless UN resolutions have condemned Israel's actions. From its occupation of Palestinian territories to the violence against Gaza, these acts not only breach the UN Charter, but also tarnish the organization's credibility. How can the UN champion justice without addressing repeated offenses? Prominent bodies like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have labeled Israel's policies as apartheid. From segregation laws to land seizures, the parallels are undeniable. For Palestinians, this is systematic oppression, not isolated incidents, and the world is beginning to take notice. International experts emphasize that apartheid isn't just about historical South Africa. The legal framework, definitions under the Rome Statute and UN reports, identify similar patterns in Israel. The question isn't if Israel fits the definition, it's why accountability is consistently delayed. Israel's hostility toward the UN Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA, raises alarms. This body exists to support Palestinian refugees, yet Israel restricts its operations and even accuses it of misconduct. The objective? Silencing Palestinian voices and rewriting history. By undermining agencies like UNRWA, Israel signals blatant disregard for international systems. The goal is clear: dismiss global accountability in favor of unchecked control. If a nation sabotages the very agencies built to enforce justice, can it truly belong in the UN? Failing to act against Israel's violations weakens the UN's credibility. How can the institution demand accountability from others while shielding some from consequences? Global peace relies on consistency, and favoritism undercuts its foundation. The ripple effects extend beyond Palestine. Turning a blind eye to apartheid emboldens other nations to exploit international bodies. Justice isn't selective. If one member falters, the global standards falter too. What's at stake is not just Palestine, but the rule of law itself. Removing Israel won't be easy. The UN structure, dominated by Security Council veto powers, complicates such bold moves. With nations like the US opposing Israel's expulsion, the process seems more political than procedural. From economic alliances to global influence, Israel's backers maintain the status quo. Is the UN truly impartial, or is it shackled by geopolitics? The dream of a fair system is tested when power outweighs principles. History shows that change often begins from the ground up. Movements against apartheid in South Africa succeeded because of global civil society's involvement. Today, activists, scholars, and advocates are rising again, demanding justice for Palestinians. Boycotts, protests, and awareness campaigns spotlight Israel's violations. Civil resistance is growing, proving that when governments hesitate, people still hold power. The louder the voices, the harder they are to ignore in global forums. Israel's removal may appear implausible, but rethinking UN accountability isn't. Expelling a member may require unprecedented steps, but categorizing Israel officially as an apartheid state within the UN framework would be a start. Global coalitions must advocate for stronger enforcement mechanisms. If Israel's actions continue unchecked, the message is clear: some nations are exempt from rules. However, redesigning UN systems of enforcement could deter violations, not just for Israel, but for any future offender. The debate is no longer about what Israel has done, but about what the global community will do. Does the world stand for justice, or turn away when it's inconvenient? UN credibility and global peace depends on the answer. It's your voice that can shift this conversation. Begin by learning, sharing, and advocating. Join global campaigns for justice and hold leaders accountable. Together, we demand fairness, because the time for action isn't tomorrow. It's now.